Borrow, lend, charge, spend on, take out a loan. There's so much confusing vocabulary around the topic of money. So I thought it would be a good topic to cover in my Intermediate English series. So let's get straight to the conversation. But don't forget, there's a pronunciation and grammar lesson followed by the quiz at the end. So let's get started. Is money important to you? Let's start with an easy question. Of course money's important to me. I like to be able to pay my bills and treat myself to something nice from time to time. What do you spend your money on the most? On a month-to-month basis, my rent is my biggest expense. Apart from that, food. I spend a lot of money on food. And in general, overall, I would say traveling is my biggest expense. You mentioned food. How much do you spend on food per month? Well, that depends on if I go out. But between myself and my husband, we would spend about 150 a week. How much do you earn? Don't you know that it's rude to ask a person that? Would you lend money to a friend or a family member if they asked? Of course, if I had it and they needed it, yeah, why not? What was your biggest investment? Well, I haven't bought a house yet, so I don't have a mortgage. So I guess the biggest investment in my life so far has been a car. Have you ever taken out a loan from a bank? Yes, it was to buy a car, and technically I didn't get it from a bank. I got it from the car dealership, so it's called buying a car on finance. Have you ever been ripped off? Not that I know of, but I'm sure I've paid too much for things. Have you ever borrowed money from someone? Yes, of course. If I borrow money, I always try to pay it back as soon as possible. Have you ever been in debt? Wow, you're really getting personal here. Yes, I have been in debt, but not majorly. Sometimes my account goes into the red, but I have an overdraft facility, so it allows me a certain amount of debit. Are you saving up for anything right now? Yes, I'm saving up for a house deposit. I haven't a whole lot put away yet, but it's growing slowly but surely. Do you like to pay for things by card or cash? I rarely have cash on me these days. Such a pain to go to the cash machine, isn't it? So I normally pay by card. I particularly like, the contactless payment. I have friends who even pay their groceries or pay for things in shops by their watch or by their phone. I haven't advanced to that level yet, but I do like to pay by card. What would you like to buy that you can't afford right now? Ooh, let me see. I think what I can't afford right now is the house of my dreams. I have an idea of what it's going to look like, but at the moment, I can't afford to build it. You're an English teacher, right? How much do you charge for your services? Actually, why don't you take a look in the description below to see my rates for my online fluency club for upper intermediate to advanced students. It's a monthly subscription program like Netflix or Amazon. You'll find it's really good value. Check it out. Now I want you to repeat after me. And where there's a blank or a gap, I want you to put your own words in. How much do you earn? I earn a pretty good living. I don't earn that much. I never loan money to friends. I took out a loan to buy a car. I'm not saving up for anything right now. I can't afford to buy the house of my dreams. How much do you charge for your services? What do you spend your money on? By this stage, you know how to form the past simple and the present perfect. Today, I'm going to take you through the when and the where to use both of these tenses so that you don't have any confusion about exactly when to use them. We use the past simple for past finished actions. For example, when we ask about something that happened in the past, how much money did you earn last year? Or when we say something happened in the past, I borrowed a bike from my brother. Notice here that we didn't mention a time frame. We didn't say yesterday or last week. It's not actually necessary to put a time frame with the past simple if it's known or understood that's a finished action in the past. Another example would be, I did my homework. You don't have to say exactly when, but the fact is it's a completed action in the past. However, quite often we do use a past time frame when using the past simple. For example, I bought a house 2 months ago. So this 2 months ago is a specific time in the past, and we have to use the past simple in this case. Now let's look at when we use the present perfect. We use the present perfect for past experiences where we don't mention a time frame, but it's still relevant to now. For example, how long have you been in your job? So obviously you're still in your job if you're asking that question in the present perfect. If you said, how long were you in your job? That means you no longer work in that job. Another example, have you ever taken out a loan? So you're talking about in all your life up until now. So it's included, now is included in this present moment. So it's relative to now. Have you ever? With that word ever, we normally use the present perfect. We often use the present perfect when something happened very recently and we're focusing on the result now. Let me give you an example. I've just bought a house. Notice how we use the word just. Just is a very common present perfect word because it implies that something happened at this very moment or really recently. And likewise, we use the present perfect with the words yet and already. They all have kind of an inbuilt time frame, so we don't need to talk about other times like yesterday or last week or in my life. So yet, already, and ever are perfect examples of words that we use with the present perfect. I haven't paid my rent yet. I've already paid my rent this month. Let's look at that last sentence. I've already paid my rent this month. This month. This is another tip when to use the present perfect. Whenever we say this plus a time frame like this week or this month or this year, we generally use the present perfect because it means that whatever this is not finished. This week means I'm still in that week. This month means this month is not finished. So we can't use the past simple because it's still relevant. Now let's look at the two tenses side by side. In the present perfect, we would say, I've had many jobs in my life. And so what you mean by this is your life from the beginning right up until now and including this moment. So it's not possible to put it in the past simple because the action is actually still happening. But if I say I got a new job last week, it's an action, a finished action in the past, and that's it. It's finished. It doesn't really have anything to do with the present moment. So we use the past simple. We would never say, I've got a new job last week. We would never use the present perfect with a past time frame like last week. Let's look at another example. I've bought a new house. So this is a perfect example of the present perfect because we don't mention a time frame at all. And the fact that you said, I've bought a house signifies to me that you've bought it recently, that it's a recent purchase, even though I don't say recently. But yes, it's a perfect example because we don't mention any time. However, you could also say, I bought a new house, because you could be referring to yesterday or last week, but you just didn't mention it. But it's possible to use the past simple like this, I bought a new house, because it is an action that's finished in the past. But as you can see, it's possible to use one tense or the other, especially when there's no time mentioned. Let's look at another example. I put a deposit down on a house yesterday. The simple fact that I mentioned yesterday, I have to use the past simple. There's no question about it. But if I took yesterday off that sentence, I've put a deposit down on a house, or I put a deposit down on a house, they can both work. In this case, like in the previous example, you can use both tenses. And just quickly, two other words that are related to the present perfect in particular are the prepositions since and for. Generally, whenever we use since, we use the present perfect, because since means something happened in the past but is still continuing. For example, I've lived here since 2016. And for can be used in both tenses, but if something is still relevant, is still happening, then we have to use the present perfect. I've been saving for 7 years. Now I've used the present perfect continuous, and that's very common to use with for. I've been saving for 7 years. If I said I saved for 7 years, it's referring to 7 years in the past. It's not referring to the present moment at all. Okay, I think we've talked enough about the present perfect and the past simple. Now it's time to test your vocabulary on money, also a quiz on the present perfect and the past simple. Let's go for it. How did you go on the quiz? Well, if you had some trouble, go back and watch the lesson again and maybe try the quiz again as well. If you have any questions, just ask them below in the comments and I'll be happy to answer. And if you want to answer the questions I asked in the conversation part in the comments below, I'll take a quick look at your answers. Thanks, and see you again very soon for another intermediate English lesson.